joking? That's really your answer?
That is my answer as of now.
Hey,
come on,
so
Farah,
even if you couldn't, even if you're not going to reason about it, let's just talk from your own personal prejudices and stuff. What do you, come on, just between us gals.
This goes back to the whole chromosomes argument, but like, you didn't check any of our chromosomes or biology before calling us a woman, right?
No,
kind of...
I think there are enough indicators. I would be mistaken, but he would not be a woman.
No, but my point
but
is
I
that
can be mistaken on
what
rare
you're looking
occasion.
at is secondary sex characteristics, and those are things that people can
Those are the
change.
signs
so
that
to
point to the
pretend
reality.
that they have an unfair advantage
I
by
love
doing
that you
so.
slipped there and you said real women.
Well, biological women. Okay.
I love it.
Biological.
No, you just accidentally said what we all know
that makes
to be
sense.
true.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, biological women, you could argue, are real.
We've already established that trans women and real women are not of the same type, so they shouldn't compete against each other.
That's why
forget about the averages.
That's why we're also saying that when it comes to like hormones or certain supplements, if the
All right, so this is one of those moments where you watch someone get absolutely intellectually dismantled in real time, and it's beautiful to watch, honestly. Michael Knowles sits down with a panel of woke girls who think they can explain gender theory. And what happens next is just a masterclass in how to expose the complete incoherence of the entire ideology. Like, watch how fast this falls apart. They can't even define what a woman is without contradicting themselves within 30 seconds. I'm talking stammering, deflecting, literal word salad. And Michael just keeps pressing them because he knows, and you're about to see this, he knows they have no actual answer. They're operating on feelings and social pressure, not logic. So buckle up, because this gets uncomfortable for them real fast. Let's get into it.
Pixie, I know you've kind of had some thoughts on this on your previous appearances. When it comes to feminism, obviously that's typically advocacy for equality, advocacy for women. I think it's important when we're talking about that to, again, define our terms. So as a nod to the Daily Wire and Matt Walsh, what is a woman?
You're gonna hate me for this one, Michael.
Lay it on.
But before I have Michael respond to you, I want all of you to respond. Why don't we have Pixie go, then Farah, and then Jasmine. Go ahead.
A woman is a person who acts and is perceived as our societal perception of a woman.
That's at least half of it.
Farah?
I'd like to do more research on this topic before publicizing an opinion. Veto.
Are you joking? That's really your answer?
That is my answer as of now.
Hey,
come on,
so
Farah,
even if you're not going to reason about it, let's just talk from your own personal prejudices and stuff. What do you, come on, just between us gals.
Just between us.
Just between us gals. That's your,
We can talk after the show.
What?
But I like to thoroughly think
even
out
Shia LaBeouf wants you to.
I like to
Okay,
thoroughly
sorry.
think out my opinions before publicizing them and platforming them.
Come on.
You don't have a
thought of-
hunch? I bet you have a hunch of
I
what
didn't say
a
I don't
woman
have a
is.
hunch,
What's
but that
your
doesn't
hunch?
mean I want to
Come
platform
on.
my hunches.
Okay.
We'll
It's
talk
too
after
dangerous
the
to
show.
venture an answer these days. Okay.
Give a
Jasmine.
hunch.
Yeah.
I would take kind of Pixie's view. I think women can be. I don't think trans women and biological women are the same, but I don't think trans women are men either. Like they're, you can have an umbrella term for women and have both trans women and biological women
So if
under
they're-
it
if
without realizing that, without also saying that they're exactly the same and they have all the same issues and everything's the same.
If they're neither men nor women, what are they?
They are
She just
women.
said
I
that they
said,
were
but
women.
I would say they're a part of the umbrella of woman.
Okay. Not a
Yeah.
part of the umbrella of man.
Yeah, they are because they're biological men.
So they're both.
You can be a trans man or a biological man, or you can be a trans woman and a biological woman. So depending on how you're looking at it, if you're looking at biology, yeah, they're not the same.
Can you though? Can your identity be different? Your metaphysical identity be different from
Your biological
physical
identity can definitely be different than your social identity. Yeah.
How?
Easy. When this goes back to the whole chromosomes argument, but like, you didn't check any of our chromosomes or biology before calling us a woman, right?
No, I think there are enough indicators.
Enough indicators,
Yeah.
but you base those indicators on like appearance. So obviously,
all
our
of my
societal-
perception.
Yeah.
You look like women, you walk like women, you smell like women. I think you're women.
That's her point, is the performance, and you're basing it off
The
of
secondary
sex
characteristics
yeah.
is what you're basing them on, and people can change their secondary sex.
your bodies is what I'm basing it on.
Which you
Yes.
can change that.
But I'm not sure that you can actually, because I think what's here at the basis of it is a Gnostic idea that you can separate your soul and your body. And I know we don't like to use the word soul anymore, so we'll say your identity, man, or whatever. But that you can separate that from your body. And I just don't think you can. I think a woman is the sort of person who isn't a man. I think that's the basic definition of a woman.
What's a man then?
A man is the sort of person who isn't a woman.
How did you know we were women?
Because you look like women.
Okay.
And
so
you
if
sound like women.
if
And when I talk to you, you give the impression that you're women.
So if a really good passing trans woman is here and you were mistaken,
Then I would be mistaken, but he
Yeah.
would not be a woman.
no. But my point
But
is
I
that
can be mistaken on
what
rare
you're looking
occasion.
at is secondary sex characteristics, and
Yeah.
those are things that people can
Those are the
change.
signs
so
that
to
point to the
pretend
reality
that
of their
this
sex.
is all men and women and like
But I'm not
this-
saying the signs are synonymous with their sex.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying the signs are signs, and the signs symbolize something.
But there is something to say about somebody that like you said, walks, talks, looks like a woman, and to say that this is now 100% a man, 100. No, you have to say.
No, he would be performing as a woman, and he might even fool me, depending on how much surgery
so
he's
he would
had. But
socially be a woman.
he would try to do that, but I
he
don't
would
think
not just
society should
try.
recognize
He
those
would-
traits.
He would not
Succeed
just
to the
try.
point-
He would
yeah.
succeed
To the point where
it
you
doesn't
don't
matter.
even realize.
Yeah.
Usually you do realize is the thing. I know they
like
convince
survivor
themselves that they
bias.
really but they I've met plenty of transsexuals because they protest my speeches, and they usually you can tell because again it gets to what we're talking about at the very top of this debate, which was the question of human nature, right? I think me and old Uncle Aristotle believe that you're a body and a soul together. I'm not just my soul trapped in a useless body. I'm not just my body without a soul or totally separated from my soul. I think I'm a soul and a body together. So my body gives me much of my sex. To use the technical term, it's an inseparable accident of the individual. And I think that pertains to my whole person, because you can't separate those two, for the whole of my life.
If you change
Pixie,
your body.
can men get pregnant?
Can men get pregnant? Not biological men.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, pause. Did you catch that? Your biological identity can definitely be different than your social identity. Like, what does that even mean? Let that sink in for a second. She's literally admitting that there's a biological reality. She said biological identity, but then trying to claim it doesn't matter because society perceives things differently. This is the entire game they play. They take something objective, something rooted in biology, chromosomes, reproductive systems, and they say, well, actually, it's all just a social construct based on how people perceive you. And Michael's response is perfect. He asks, how? Because he knows there is no answer. There is no coherent way to separate your biological sex from your identity, unless you buy into this Gnostic idea that your body and soul are completely disconnected. And look at what she does next. She pivots to, well, you didn't check our chromosomes before calling us women. Yeah, because you look like women. You are women. The secondary sex characteristics you have aren't some random performance. They're signs that point to the biological reality of your sex. Michael nails this. He says the signs symbolize something. They're not synonymous with sex. They're indicators of it. But here's where it gets really wild. Jasmine tries to argue that because you can change secondary sex characteristics through hormones and surgery, that somehow means you can change your sex. No. You can alter your appearance. You can try to mimic the opposite sex. But you cannot actually become the opposite sex. A man who takes estrogen and gets surgery is still a man. He's just a man who's had surgery. And Michael calls this out so clearly when he talks about being mistaken. He says, yeah, if a trans woman passes well enough, I might be fooled. But that doesn't make him a woman. It just means the performance was convincing. The signs fooled me, but the reality didn't change. What's hilarious to me is how these girls keep appealing to perception and performance as if that settles it. Like society perceives them as women, so they are women. Okay, cool. So truth is whatever people think it is? That's the foundation of your worldview? Because if that's the case, you have no ground to stand on for anything. If biological reality doesn't matter, and it's all just vibes and perception, then literally nothing is true. Everything is subjective, and they don't realize that admitting that collapses their entire framework. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about that.
Okay.
Can we really divide men up like that? Like, I'm a biological man, but I'm a spiritual woman, and I'm a...
I mean, we do, what is it? We do classifications within gender all the time. Black woman, white woman, for example.
That'd be racial.
Yeah,
not
no, but
gender,
that's still within the scope of women. You're still saying, oh, there's women who are black, there's women who are not black. There are women who have had essay experiences, there's women who haven't had experiences.
Race is real, though it's actually more difficult to pin down than sexual difference, but it's real. Yeah, there are different races, sure. So
Yeah.
you can, black people and white people are different races, and men and women are different sexes.
Last thing
And, yeah.
oh, sorry. go ahead.
One can't become the other, except in the case of Michael Jackson, who he got the closest, but he was still, I think he was still a black guy.
Wasn't that vitiligo?
That's what he said.
Well, that's
what
okay.
he said. I don't know if I believe Michael
Okay.
Jackson, because
Yeah,
he was
actually,
yeah.
you I don't want to say stumbled because that's condescending, but whatever. You stumbled onto something quite interesting.
I'm glad I did.
Because the whole idea is that when it comes to like the notion of race, the reason why Michael Jackson was technically never white, he was always black, is because we treat race as like a historical question. Basically, what we're asking when we ask somebody what's your race is basically what is your ancestry, like what got you here to be here now, versus sex or gender specifically, where we treat it more of a societal conception, like what are you performing as.
Yeah, I don't treat it that way at all, and I think that I think racial difference is real. The reason Michael Jackson's black is because he did Thriller. You know, like, I don't think you can't really change your race. Rachel Dolezal tried, and she ruined her life because of it. But if you could, I mean, I'm kind of swarthy, right? You might think I'm like Arabic or Mexican or something, even though I'm Italian and waspy. I don't know, waspy, which you see in the Mayflower cigar, actually. But I certainly couldn't change my sex, because the difference between a black guy and a white guy, I'm not saying there are not differences, that there are physical differences, there are cultural differences, sure, maybe, but those differences are nothing compared to the difference between a man and a woman.
Okay, the point is, I think what we're trying to get at here is that when it comes to like our conception of sex versus gender, we base our conception of gender on how somebody
Dustin
looks
Washburn donated
and acts
$200.
more than anything else.
Michael, with your talk and logic about soul and body, do you believe it's possible for the wrong soul to be placed in the wrong body?
No, because I think, following old Uncle St. Thomas Aquinas, that the sex derives mostly from the body. So it would be incoherent to say that the soul is another sex. Because if the soul were a different sex, the soul being the substantial form of the body, it would mean that men and women are different species. And men and women have a lot of differences, but we're not.
Why did God create gender dysphoria?
Dustin, thank you. Last thing on this, and I think, Pixie, you've had, on your previous appearances, you've maybe had thoughts on this. And I think feminists tend to differ on this last topic that we're going to hit on when it comes to the trans discussion, sports. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there should be separation? What are your thoughts on, for example, trans women participating in women's sports?
Yeah, so I think what I've currently seen of the data and studies is that even after taking hormones and such, there might still be advantages in certain ways. So to me, it would be like, it's a theoretical question, like I would have to have more data, but basically if it seems that some of like these biological advantages are like too high or it cannot be mitigated enough through the use of hormones and such, then yeah, it would be too much of an unfair advantage, versus if the data shows otherwise, that it's like, no, actually it is like mitigated well enough. So that's my general stance on
Isn't it that aren't we just all slaves to like the data? You know, it's like, well, if the study shows,
I love the
like,
data.
Yeah, maybe, but the data are so manipulated. I mean, social scientific data, they're in a major replication crisis.
Well, if
right?
it wasn't, the scientific method is our best way to get to the truth.
Is it? I'm not sure about that.
I would say so. So I think it's the best we have. Otherwise, we just have our anecdotes and our feelings. and
No,
our
but
subjective
look,
opinions.
I'm all for empirical scientific analyses of the things that it can measure, but those are all physical things, and what we're talking about here is deeper than a physical thing, right? We're talking because we're not mere flesh. I don't think we think we're mere flesh.
Well,
So
this is
this
where we
is-
disagree, because we think that
You
yes.
think you're just flesh?
No. We disagree on whether, like, you're like, oh, the issue here isn't the data. The data on whether this would be unfair to women is what I care about.
Well, because
if it wasn't, then I would say, yeah, they could do it.
The data on whether this is unfair to women are not going to come from some like dork economist. That those data are going to come from the reality of the different. It's going to come from natural scientists. Certainly, it's going to come from people who have an understanding of what human nature is and what justice is.
No, I don't think this is a
no,
human nature debate. I think this is about, does your muscle mass give you an advantage? And if you take hormones, it seems to not, like you said, reverse all of the advantages that you have.
How does a scientific study conclude something about fairness or justice? How do you measure
No, it
justice
doesn't.
under a
It doesn't jump
microscope?
to that conclusion, but we use their conclusions to then make our opinions.
Oh,
So-
you're saying so you would look at a scientific survey and say, wow, that big husky dude who swam against the women, turns out he was a lot faster than all those little women, and therefore I conclude that men competing against women in a women's sport is unjust.
No, what you should
I'm
do
with
is
you.
you should be like, hey, okay, how do we realize if, like, okay, I don't know, should trans women compete with real women? I don't know. Do they have an unfair advantage
I
by
love
doing
that you
so?
slipped there and you said real women.
Well,
Oh, that's
biological
great.
women. Okay.
I
yeah,
love it.
biological.
No, you just accidentally
Yeah,
said what
I
we
think
all
that
know
makes
to be
sense.
true.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, biological women, you could argue, are real women, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean
Because
trans
the
women are not.
which
The
implies
point-
that the trans women are not really under the category.
they're not under the
real
category of
women.
biological women. And
No,
so
no,
what
you-
I want
no, you just said they're not
or
under the
even
category
under
of
the,
real women.
Okay, well, you can harp on that. My point here is
No,
that
I think it's.
if-
I'm not trying to get you. I'm just
Okay.
trying to point out you
the
have
point I'm
admitted.
trying to make is if I'm trying to figure out the answer to this question, and the question for me is not what is natural or what is Catholicism say, it's is this unfair to have trans women compete with real women? Well, I want to know, and the way to know that is to look at the science, not to just look at somebody.
How do you know what's fair and what's not fair?
In sports, to have an unfair advantage, and that you could
Yes,
you would
unfair
have to
things are
compare
unfair,
the
but how do you
averages.
know what
you'd
is
have to
unfair?
compare, like, right, like you would have to see, okay, if you this is why they banned certain drugs. I don't know anything about sports. I'm assuming all this.
I'm
But,
just saying,
like,
how do you know what fairness is?
we all have. I would say that the only way you really know how fairness is that we.
Hold on. Did she just say real women? She did. She literally said, should trans women compete with real women, and then tried to backtrack. That's the slip. That's the moment where the truth comes out. Because deep down, everyone knows. Everyone knows that trans women are not the same as biological women. They know it. They just can't say it out loud because they're terrified of the backlash. And Michael catches it immediately. He doesn't let her slide. He says, I love that you slipped there and you said real women, because that's what this whole debate is about. They're trying to create this umbrella category where biological women and trans women are both women, but also somehow different. But also you can't say one is more real than the other because that's transphobic. It's incoherent. It collapses under the slightest pressure. Look at how Pixie tries to save it. She pivots back to the science, back to the data, back to, well, if the hormones bridge the gap enough. But here's the thing, and Michael hammers this home. You cannot determine fairness and justice through a scientific study. Science can tell you that a biological male has more muscle mass, denser bones, larger lung capacity. Science can measure those things. But science cannot tell you whether it's just or fair for that person to compete against women. That's a philosophical question. That's a question of what is right, what is fair, what is true. And they keep trying to dodge that by appealing to data and studies. Well, if the data shows that hormones eliminate the advantage, then it's fine. Okay, but what if the data is manipulated? What if the studies are funded by activist organizations with a predetermined conclusion? What if the entire premise of the study is flawed because it assumes that men and women are functionally identical aside from hormones? You see how this works? Michael brings up the social science replication crisis, and they just brush past it because they don't want to admit that the studies they're relying on are garbage. They're ideologically driven. They're designed to reach a specific conclusion that aligns with gender ideology, and anyone who questions them gets labeled a bigot. But the deeper issue here is what Michael said earlier. This is not just about flesh. This is not just about muscle mass and bone density. This is about human nature. It's about what it means to be a man or a woman. And you can't answer that question in a lab. You have to have a coherent philosophy of the human person. You have to understand that men and women are fundamentally different, not just in body, but in purpose, in nature, in how we're ordered toward reproduction and family and society. And they don't have that framework. They're operating from a worldview that says there is no fixed human nature. Everything is fluid. Everything is constructed. And when you start from that premise, you end up with absurdities like a man can become a woman if he takes enough hormones, or fairness is whatever the data says it is. Michael destroys that. He exposes the entire thing as intellectually bankrupt, and they know it. You can see it. They're stammering. They're deflecting. They're appealing to, I need to do more research, because they don't have answers. Let me know in the comments what you think.
Like we have a
Conscience?
feeling about it. That's all I can say.
Is it a
no,
feeling, or
I
is it a
think- what is
reasonable
it?
conscience?
You can compare averages.
You can compare averages, yeah, but also the hunch, even the idea that we all want things to be fair is like an evolutionary, in my opinion, just thing that we all kind of seem to
Michael
have
Phelps
because it was
is a faster
evolutionary
swimmer than
advantageous.
Michael Phelps is a faster swimmer than some guy we've never heard of. Does he have an unfair advantage over the guy we never heard of? They have different average swimming times. Is the average swimming time going to imply something about fairness and justice? No, you need something else to come to a conclusion about justice and fairness, and that's not going to be scientific.
Well,
It's going to be
we're not
philosophical
saying-
and ultimately
Yeah,
religious.
I agree. Philosophical.
Quick. Last points. Go ahead, Pixie.
I'm gonna say I do think that comparing averages does give us greater insight what's like fairness or not. So, for example, Michael Phelps competing with other Olympic swimmers is much more fair than Michael Phelps competing against like a completely average swimmer. So obviously, there's something to be said about people within like the same leagues or performing around the same level, and that's why we have like golden versus bronze versus like
Right.
silver categories.
Well, no, that would just be awards for the
Yeah,
people
no,
within
but
the
I'm
same
saying
category.
like sorry, I should have said Division 1, Division 2, Division
Sure.
3.
So you're saying people who are of the same type, it would be fair for the people of the same type to compete against each other.
Yes.
But we've already established that trans women and real women are not of the same type, so they shouldn't compete against each other.
That's why
Forget
we're-
about the averages.
That's why we're also saying that when it comes to like hormones or certain supplements, if the divide gets bridged enough, then it might open to new discussion or different discussion.
So
that's why we're
if you
saying
pump
it's
yourself full of
data-based.
enough hormones, then the trans woman who is not a real woman could become a real woman?
It's not
That's
about being a real woman, because as we said
I
before,
was
these are
just
not just
using-
these are not just matters of the flesh, as you stated before. A lot of this is about societal perception of what a woman is, and that goes back to like certain actions and certain looks. So in our day-to-day life, that's what we rely the concept of woman on, actions and looks.
I just guess I wouldn't trust society more than I would trust objective truth.
All right, so let's just be clear about what we just watched. Michael Knowles absolutely dismantled every single argument these girls tried to make in defense of gender ideology. And it wasn't even close. They couldn't define a woman without contradicting themselves. They couldn't explain how biology and identity can be separated without appealing to feelings and social perception. They couldn't defend trans women in sports without accidentally admitting that trans women aren't the same as real women. It was a complete intellectual collapse. And this is what happens every single time someone actually presses these people on their beliefs. The ideology falls apart immediately because it's not based on reason. It's based on emotion, social pressure, and a complete rejection of objective truth. They want you to believe that reality is whatever society says it is, that a man can become a woman just by identifying as one, that fairness and justice are determined by scientific studies instead of philosophy and moral reasoning. It's absurd. Michael won this debate before it even started because he's operating from a coherent worldview. He understands human nature. He understands that men and women are fundamentally different and that those differences matter. He understands that you can't separate the body and soul. And because he has that foundation, every single argument he makes is airtight. Meanwhile, these girls are flailing because they have no foundation. They're building on sand. And look, I get it. They're young. They've been fed this ideology their entire lives. They probably genuinely believe they're fighting for something good. But the reality is, they're defending an incoherent, destructive ideology that undermines women, undermines truth, and ultimately undermines society itself. So drop a like if you think Michael Knowles absolutely destroyed this debate. Share this with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this. That's what we do here at MB. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.